This is the bloodiest single day in all of American history. When they saw these photos, it shocked the nation. The slaughter was just terrible.
Coming up from the American Battlefield Trust.
Although photography was already decades old at the time of the Civil War, it literally took decades for the technology to advance sufficiently to allow for mass production of photographs, and also to allow photographers to actually go out into the field and make documentary images of events as they unfolded. One of those early sort of pioneering photographers was Matthew Brady, and one of his employees was Alexander Gardner, who with his crew came in the footsteps of the soldiers and actually came to the Antietam Battlefield just days after it ended. Let us now step into their photographs. We're standing right in front of the Dunker Church on the Antietam National Battlefield. Tens of thousands of soldiers struggled around this area on September 17th, 1862. The church itself stood out during the battle. It stood out against the woods. Everybody could see it, and it was a point to which people could attack and direct their artillery fire. And it's no surprise that the carnage was visible 3 days after the battle when Alexander Gardner and his photographic crew showed up here to document the horrific scenes at the Battle of Antietam. The Dunker Church is visible. It's clearly been damaged during the battle. The famous Hagerstown Pike traversing the foreground, and of course, the evidence, the human carnage of battle, evident in the foreground for all of America to see. It shocked the nation. One newspaper correspondent said that if Mr. Brady, who owned the photographic firm, had not dragged the bodies to our doorsteps, he has done something very like it. From a very similar location, Gardner simply pivoted his camera and recorded a battery unlimbered specifically for this picture. Let's step into that one. Tens of thousands of soldiers struggled over the very hills you can see in the distance, the cornfields off in the distance, a place called the Epicenter, the East Woods and the North Woods would be visible off in that direction as well. After the battle, dead littered the battlefield here, and it was just a scene of absolute carnage. And amidst that carnage, up shows Alexander Gardner. He recorded a photo right from this spot, and we can sort of step into that photo. The photo that he took actually shows some Pennsylvania artillerymen. You see them unlimbered for battle. You can see the battlefield behind them. You can see a dead horse in the photo, and most importantly, you can see soldiers who had just been through the most severe test that any of them had ever seen before. This is the bloodiest single day in all of American history, and this photographer was able to get here and record it for posterity. Further for posterity, one of the men in the battery wrote in his diary that this photo was taken on September 20th, 1862, not long before these Pennsylvanians marched off toward their next adventure. After recording numerous photos around the Dunker Church and environs, Gardner moved north, and then he is going to be presented with a scene of dead soldiers twisted and mangled along a rail fence on the Hagerstown Pike. During one of the earlier phases of the Battle of Antietam, Confederate soldiers from Louisiana took position along this fence, along the Hagerstown Pike at the battlefield of Antietam. They were in a good position to be able to duel with the Union soldiers on the other side until more Union soldiers showed up behind them, and the slaughter over here was just terrible. Now, Alexander Gardner and his crew came here not long after, and if you look behind you here, you can see one of the famous photos they took of the carnage here along the Hagerstown Pike, looking up the hill with the Hagerstown Pike sort of on the right side of the photo at that point, or of your view. Gardner didn't stop there. He took additional photos here for a total of 5 photos showing the dead along the Hagerstown Pike. As the burial crews did their work, Gardner's opportunities to photograph more dead on the battlefield evaporated. And he turned to more traditional subjects, including an extensive series more than a mile to the south of the Burnside Bridge. After the first failed attempt to capture Burnside Bridge at 10 a.m., Burnside tried again. At noon, he failed again. At 1 p.m., though, the third time was the charm, as New York and Pennsylvania soldiers charged across the bridge and overwhelmed the weakened Confederate force. A few days later, Alexander Gardner and his crew showed up at this location and recorded this scene through their wet plate camera. You can see in the photo the graves of some of the New Yorkers and maybe some Pennsylvanians who perished during their attempt to capture the bridge. You can actually see a soldier posed by Alexander Gardner along this very wall overlooking the scene that you see right now. Just a month after the Battle of Antietam, Brady exhibited Gardner and his assistants' work at his New York gallery in downtown Manhattan. Although paintings and illustration had often sort of glamorized battlefields of old, showing, the dead in a dramatic form atop a parapet with a flag draped across their breast, these photographs showed something quite different. His exhibition was called The Dead of Antietam, and crowds came in and newspaper people came in and got to see what the true glory of war looked like. It wasn't like they imagined. It was cold, it was lonely, it was the opposite of a good 19th century death, as they called it. From that date forward, photography and the public's perception of war would forever change.
Get inspired at battlefields.org.